Boyle from Nimbin Valley Pecans and Rice at Cuming Creative, northern New South Wales, Australia. The wholesalers buying our product from us always used to... It was a ploy to have to pay us less for our product, telling us that our product wasn't up to standard, to cut the payment. And that's why it was so satisfying to be able to go to the markets and get positive feedback from the people that are buying our products. Selling direct at the farmers market kept me financially viable on the farm. Up till then I was working off farm 3 days a week. Generally in Australia, as farmers, we don't get a lot of support from government. We get no subsidisation of food and very few tariffs on imported food. So it makes it very difficult to compete against countries that are paying their people $1 a day. My family has been here for over 150 years. My mum and dad live next door and me and my wife live here. After the Second World War, when sort of chemical agriculture became the norm, it was what the farmers were advised to do, and it looked like a great solution to farming. So farms around here used a lot of chemical fertilisers, which a lot of them are really harsh on the soil. They might make the plants grow, but they kill all the microbes in the soil. Yeah. But in all fairness to my father and his father before him, they were advised that it was the greatest thing since sliced bread. It takes 5 years before you see much change at all. And so we're just starting to see a bit of a change now. The soil's loosening up from the degradation that's happened in the last 50 years. We process our nuts on farm. All the waste products from that we turn back into compost. Rice production is done dry land, and how the main visual difference is it's not in a paddy. It just looks like any other dry land crop, wheat or barley. So we just cultivate the land through the spring and just plant into dry soil and just rely on the rainfall. The rainfall, there's no supplementary irrigation at all. I always like to be optimistic, yeah. I've seen a big shift in consumers. People are becoming much more aware of and prepared to put their money where their mouth is and spend a little bit more on locally produced food. People are getting into food, rather than just being a commodity.
Right, Garry Fetherston's the name, and I'm just outside Mullumbimby. This is a farm that my parents bought 30 years ago. I was pretty excited with the potential of what this property had. 15 years later I quit my job and decided to move up and dedicate my life to the environment of this 22 acres. Food Connect is based on supporting small family farms who do things in the right way. You do research on your methods, and I told them I wasn't continuing down this organic certification. I just want to grow bananas, and I know what I do and I know what's best for this land, and there won't be any chemicals on the fruit. We sold at the farmers market, but I wasn't getting the consistent supply to have a weekly stall, so the Food Connect model suited me much better. I remember when I was at school, I asked, what would you like to do and there was a list of all these jobs, professional jobs and things, and the farmer was in there. I wrote farmer, and I had no idea what I was saying at the time. It was a romantic idea to go out in the country and produce the food for the community. It's just nowadays that's changed. It's not, in those days that was very doable and people were doing it. That you might move to the country and buy a farm. You would have put a mortgage on a property to try and do the same thing? Impossible. You go to a chemical intensive farm where they use sprays and pesticides, it's got a different vibe, a different look. But you can see here that there's lizards and earthworms and there's insects everywhere. And that's a beautiful thing about what I've done here. It's just so alive. The magpies, the three birds, the residents on this property, they're always walking up and down these rows because there's so many insects. When I put the compost on, they bring out so many worms and everything. The magpies just live here. They never used to live here. They used to live near the house before I started this project. And that to me is the only endorsement that I need that I'm doing it right. It's not the Garden of Eden or anything. You have to manage it. So I'll have to look into what I use next year. Most of the things I use will be organically certified. That's where I stand. Biological farmer, natural farming systems. This is only a very small scale, of course, but if the whole world farmed like that, we'd be going down the track of solving the whole issue. Yeah, that's all I got to say there, I suppose.
I'm Joel Orchard. I'm based in Mullumbimby, which is northern New South Wales on the east coast of Australia. Having moved up here with the real desire to be able to be sustainable for my own food, I pretty much committed 12 months ago to making farming my profession and try to help other people move in that direction as well. Average age of farmers is now 57 in Australia. Anticipating something like 75% of farmers to retire in the next 10 years or be working beyond when they should have retired. We have a supermarket duopoly, two massive corporations taking control of 80% of the food distribution in Australia. Puts enormous stress and market dominance on the food system. How do we break away from that dependence? Future Feeders is an organisation that was developed just over 12 months ago, primarily to support and encourage young people into farming. And we really saw the need to provide some sort of supportive development program for young people with view of also providing more employment opportunities for our local region in ecological or sustainable agricultural practices. I sort of find there's a huge gap in support and networks and availability for resources specifically for the demographic of under 40s, where the next generation, which really is going to be the leaders, and they're the ones that are suffering now from the decisions made from the generations before us. We need to start taking control for our actions and lead our own revolution, and that's, for me, is the power of joining young people together. And I see farming as an activist act, as a way to create a revolution, and connection through food and the environment is really important, and that's a really powerful way to do it. I think farming is really punk. That's what's great about it. Well, that's what punk is great. It's anarchy and it's DIY, and that's what farming is all about.
My name's Sharon. I live in Mullumbimby, northern New South Wales, growing food for my family, and then from that learning about permaculture and practicing permaculture was definitely a way for me to continue working for change, to make the world a better place. Permaculture is working with nature rather than against nature. It's about observing natural systems and then applying them at home. So when I found myself at home a lot parenting, I just started growing food for my kids. I wanted to provide good, wholesome, organic food for my kids, and I just found I loved it. And I also found it was a way for me to still enact in environmental change. So it's actually quite amazing that on this small block we're able to provide not all our own food, but most of our own food for a family of 4. Our own veggies, fruit. We raise meat chickens for meat. This system is 5 years old, and we're only now starting to get produce from certain trees as they mature. And we've already got more food than we can handle. So, in the next 5 years, we're, as Bill Mollison would say, is in grave danger of falling fruit. So this system is set up to be self-sustaining. We have had a situation where older people in the street were feeling a bit uncomfortable with what they saw as the messiness. And initially, my feeling was, I have a right to grow food if I want to. But when I thought about it, I thought about who I want to encourage to take up this sort of lifestyle. So in response, we decided to clean up the front and try and make it look a little bit more traditional. Now, it still looks pretty messy, but certainly the older people felt heard. And more neighbours have taken up growing food since we ran the Sustainable Streets program. So you're starting to see gardens coming up in front yards or on the roadside verges. My advice would be to start very, very small start at your back door. Farming takes many years to become an expert at, or even if you ever become an expert at. It's nature is always changing, every season is always very different. So the main thing is keeping it small, and just understand that every mistake that you make is a great learning experience. In permaculture, that's what we're doing. This year was a little bit different, and we lost a lot of green leafy vegetables to grasshoppers. But in other ways, it was a good year, and we got an abundance of other things, so it all balances out. I really want people to get that this is possible. Like, this is a small block, it doesn't take a lot of work. Sometimes I don't go in my garden for a month. No system is perfect, and it is achievable on a small scale like this, even without a lot of experience. If you just dive in, I think it's achievable.
How do we break away from that dependence? Because if anything was to happen to their distribution model, all of a sudden we become very, very hungry very, very quickly. Let's counter that, do it completely the opposite. Let's work on really intense but small-scale farms.
Because we're direct marketing all of our product, our customers are more than happy to hear my story and be happy with the way that we produce our crops.
Directly competing with the supermarkets with a product that is clearly much more ethical and a bit of a hippie, I suppose, in that way. But I think it works as well. If people are genuinely interested in where their food comes from, come and have a look. I'll show you where your bananas come from. It's great.
I set myself a couple of challenges every month of things that we're trying to change or things we're trying to do better. So I think it's really important for people to know that it's a journey. So, try and be disciplined, but don't give up.